Hey guys, welcome to my channel. So guys, in this video we are going to learn about new topic, that is jQuery Ajax CRUD application in Codeigniter 4.x versions. So guys, now let's get started with that. So as simple, I have created a route with that Ajax student where you can see this page. Okay, so let's go to this page and start inserting the data using jQuery Ajax in CRUD application. So all the data will be stored without any reload of the page. Okay, so let's get started guys. As simple, you can see fresh application. Let's move to our app, then views. Inside views, I have created Ajax folder, and this is index.php file which is extended from the layout. So in this frontend.php, I have included the bootstrap. Okay, let's move to layouts folder and frontend.php. Over here you can see that bootstrap min.css file is there, and then bootstrap min.js file is there, and then jQuery link about that. So you can utilize in this format and use the code for it, like pop-up models. So if you don't have, please include from here. So let's click on docs and getting started. You can copy this CSS links and this bundle link. Okay, or else you can paste it separate as I have pasted for popper and bootstrap. Done. So now let's get back. Once included your setup with this once, then let's get back to our index page and start the code about it. So first I will make one card, and inside this card I am going to make card header, and here h4 tag where I will tell jQuery Ajax CRUD. Okay, where student data, this will be the student data, and card body where you are going to fetch all the data. So before fetching, we are going to insert the data. So now over here you will be using, let's create one a tag, create a and close a, href is equal to where I'm going to give hash symbol shift 3, and inside this we have to give add. So before giving add, I want to give a class and design this button. So button where I'll make this as primary, and let's float it to end. So I'm using bootstrap 5, so I'm using end. If you are bootstrap 4, please use right. Let's save this and check the output. So you can view the output, right? So now when I click on this, the data should get popped up like pop-up model. So guys, let's go to a bootstrap and search for the model, modal. Let's click on it, and over here you can see the one demo. So this is how the model looks, and let us go little down, live demo. Let's click on it. You can see this. So let's copy this only. Okay, so this is the button. So I don't need the button design, I just need this small code. Let's copy this and paste into our a tag over here. Just paste that. Let me just minimize this sidebar, and now you can see that example model. So instead of example model, I want to tell student model. As simple. Let's save this, and now over here above this only, not here, we'll make it to above container. We will paste the model. So what model you're going to paste? This pop-up model design. So guys, it's below only, so it's given over here. You can see that. So let's copy and paste. Done. As simple, in a small design is done. And now the ID which we have made now, student model, let's copy this and replace over here. Done. So if you want to change this label also, example, let's make that also simple. Let's save and change the title, student data. Save changes to place, just give save, and let's refresh and check the output first. Get back, reload the page, and now let me click on add. So we have clicked, here is the model. So guys, the requirement is about adding our data. So for that, let's create a table on it, and then we will insert the data. So guys, I have already created the table where you can see that where I have created with the name called students, and this has ID, name, email, phone, course, and created at. So this created at is nothing but the timestamp I have given over there. So let me view the structure of it. Over here you can see all the types of it and the default, where I have selected with the default called current timestamp. That's it. So let's go and start the coding about it. So first, what are the fields you want to insert? Name, email, phone, and course. Okay, so now let's get started with creating 4 input fields. Let's go over here and as simple, let's remove this dot and tell form group, and inside this one label where I'll remove this, and let's add full name. And now over here, input type text, give a class form control, and the placeholder is equal to enter your full name. That's it. So let's copy and replace with everyone and change this the type to email, and then phone number, and then one final which is about the course. So let's copy and replace over here also. Okay, as simple, copy this email and paste. Done. So let's refresh and check the output. Click on it where you can find all these details. So guys, now let's start to enter. Okay, placeholder didn't come. Let's check. Okay, spelling mistakes. So let's Control D and give the correct spelling, and let's give a class for it. Inside this class you have to specify its details. Okay, so what details you are going to specify? This will be the name and email. Here will be phone. With this only we are going to insert the data with this help of class, and the course. Save. That's it. Let's get back, refresh. You can see all the placeholder is also coming. So guys, now let's insert the data for this. So let's get started with that. Here the name, where you are going to tell Ajax student hyphen save. Okay, so this is your class name now. So let's take this class name and code it below. Paste that below. Let's code over here. Okay, so now guys, we need to render the section. So about what rendering the section is nothing but about the script tags. So let me just copy this same section and call that over here. Okay, let's copy this and paste it again, where you will tell this as scripts, and let's copy this and over here in your front end .php, where you have extended all the layouts, right? So over here, how you have extended the render section, let's extend one more render section for script tag. So make sure whatever you render, it should be below this jQuery and Bootstrap. So let me just show you, it's over here. So I have rendered this. So let's copy this same name and paste in your index page. Okay, so same name. So now you are ready to code over here. So let's use the script tag to start the code, and now let us call that class name. So on this click, we have to check that it's working or not. So let's use jQdoc shortcut to get started with that. So let's use on-click event. So on-click event on in this, we need on the document, and then on this click event thing, you are going to use CLICK. Okay, so no spelling mistake. And now over here on this class and your button Ajax. So let's see if we click on this button, it works or not. Let's type over here, hello, I'm here. So let's save this and let's check that it's working fine or not. So let's get back, refresh the page, and now let's click on this add, click on this save button. You can see hello, I'm here, perfectly working. So guys, now first let us validate this input field. So if there is no empty, it should show an error, or else it should insert the record. As simple. So let's get started with that. So let's remove this and start the code about it. If inside this if and then else condition. Okay, if it works means great, like that. So let's give that trim function to validate. So I've just pasted now over here, and inside this guys we have to fetch this. Okay, so what is that you are fetching? That is name. Okay, and now this name will be called from your input tag. So this input tag which we have used a class called name, so this I'm copying and pasting here, as simple. Now done. And when you're validating this, you have to set that. So let's call error underscore name is equal to, where inside single quote we will tell please enter full name. Okay, you have to paste it somewhere. So this error should be pasted somewhere. So how will you paste that? So let's copy this and do it over here. And now inside this you're going to say $error, same name we will give. Let's copy this and the same name you are going to give, and let's copy this once again and paste it below, as simple, and make this to null. Done. So this is how you do validation. So let's create a ID with a span tag. So let's move over there, input. So this is our input, right? So over here only I'm going to create one span where I will give this ID is equal to inside this error name, and let's give one class for the designing purpose where text hyphen danger and margin s will be 3. So that's sideways. So let's copy this and create for everyone. Same way you are going to create that. Let's paste and change this from error email, error phone, and then course. Done. So it's now let's save this, and now over here you have to repeat the same code for 4 of them also. So let me just copy and paste and arrange according to it. So let's just move with this. So let's paste and just finish that. Okay, so before pasting that, let us just test once. So let's go over here and let me just refresh. Okay, now clicked. Let's click on it, and now without any entering data, so I'm going to click on save. You can see that message has popped, please enter full name. So this is how we do validation. So make sure you're completing with this, all the 4 details. So let me just paste with that. Okay guys, I have already pasted now, as simple. This is for email, and this is for phone, and this is for the course. Okay, so once your validation code is done, then we will move on with this condition to check that. So if the condition works, then you are going to check and return false. False if the condition executes, then we have to save the code. So how will you save that? So we will be using Ajax code. So before that we have to give the conditions. So what condition you are going to give? This same error name. So let's copy this error name and paste over in this if condition not equal to null or your email. So let's copy this email, which will be not equal to null, or again the same condition for phone, which will be not equal to null, or then final, which is error course, which is not equal to null. Done. So once it's done, we are coming to this condition over here. So let me just show a demo with that. Let's alert and let's give hello. Save this and let's check with that. Let's refresh, add, and let's click on everyone. Okay, so you can see that everything is working fine. Let's click on this every data we are going to give, save, hello, you have come over here. Cool. So this is how we check with that. So let's close this, refresh, and let's get back to code. So guys, now let's type with the Ajax query over here, jQuery Ajax, where all the details of that will come, and we don't need this data type, so we'll remove this and this method from type to method, and over here you are going to tell post, and let's create a URL for that to store the data. So let's create Ajax -student student/store, and then create with that, and then over here data. So let's cut this and directly paste that, and let's create this data over here. So what data you're going to pass over here is nothing but all your input tags. So let me just open with curly brace and give semicolon over here, and now inside this you're going to pass all the details of your input values. So let's create name. Let me just finish with that one step. So let's give dollar open parenthesis and close and value. So now over here you need to pass the name whatever you are getting from the input. So we are getting a name tag, name with the class. So let me just show you. So this name we are getting, not this name, okay, from your input. So that name we are calling over here. So let's call over here, and same way you have to call all your inputs. So before giving this semicolon, just give comma. It's not the. So guys, let's change these names over here. Second was email, and then third was phone, and the fourth one was course. Okay. So same way you are going to copy and paste with this also. Make it phone. Oops, phone, phone, email. So this data will be sent over here. And now once it is sent, we have to show that message. Okay, so I have used alertify thing into my application. So you want to know about that, how to show that message, you have to watch the video, which is link is given into the description. So I'll paste that alertify thing. So guys, once I save that, data is saved. Just imagine data is saved, then it will show the success message. So before showing the message, we want to close the model. So I mean to say, like when we are clicking on the save data, that time this field should get empty and then model should be closed automatically. So for that, there is a simple code for that. Type where you're going to tell modal. So the model is a bootstrap JS thing where you're going to tell hide, and what model you're going to hide is nothing but your student model which you have created. So let me just show you. So this is the ID which you created now. So let's get back to our script, and over here you are going to call that because it in the ID, so you have to paste that. And now inside this only, if there is any data, so what data you are going to tell? Input tags. So let's find in this model. So in the student model, you have to find that what you are going to find, all the input tags, and if it is there, you are going to set the value as null. Okay, so which will remove all the values and make it to null. Simple. So let's save, and now guys, you have to create a route for it. So let's copy and create a route. Let's go over there, routes.php, and over here let's create that routes where you're going to use post method. Okay, not post. Over here let's pass that route. Let me just remove this forward thing, and now you have to call your controller. So we have already created the controller, so let's paste that and let's give a store function. Let's create a store function in your student Ajax student controller. So let me just move to it. In my controller you can see Ajax student controller. So let's open that over here, and now let's create a function, public function, where you are going to create one student function, and now inside this you have to code the data. So let's call our database table, so which is nothing but your model. So this student table, we have to create a model for it. We have already created with that. So I'll just show you inside my models where you can see Ajax student I have created and added all the data into it. Okay, and now let's call this model called Ajax student. So let's use at the top. So we have already used, and let's call this. Okay, so let's create a variable called students is equal to new Ajax student and give semicolon. After this you are going to create one data variable, assign an array, and inside this you are going to call your database name. So this name will be your column name. So over here let's copy this name and paste, and then call your input fields. Okay, so $this, which is request request of, which is coming by getting by post method. Okay, and what is the four data you're getting? How you're calling into your index function, where it is. Okay, so these are the fields. So let's copy this name and call over here, as simple. So this is how you are going to call. Let's remove this semicolon and give comma because it's in array. So let me just do for that 3 also. Okay, paste and done, guys. So now let's give a save function to store this data. So let's copy this variable student and use the save function, and over here you are going to pass this $data. Let's copy and paste. So it will be getting saved, inserted, but I want to show the status also. What is the status of that? So let's create a variable called data, and inside this you are going to store the value. What value we are going to store? Status, which will be called as student inserted successfully. Done, and let's return this. Return $this, which is we are going to return in JSON format. So return response in set JSON, open and close parenthesis, and inside this you are going to pass this data. That's it. Saved. So once it is sent, that time what will happen? We are taking the status. So let's go to our index page over here, and you can see that same status spelling we are getting. So whatever the response is coming inside that, I am concatenating with the status. So once the status is set, it will show the message. So it's now let's check and insert the data. So there is no data into this table right now. So let's insert that and check with that. So before inserting, make sure your developer tool is on and check with that. So these are the basic things which is of the bootstrap. Just ignore this, and whatever the error comes, now we'll check with that. So let's click on this ved@gmail.com 888 save the course, which is BCA. Let's click on save. Okay, so you can see that message has come, student entered successfully, and there was no error also. So guys, now let me just click on this, and you can see that all the fields are empty and model automatically closed. Now guys, let us see in this input, DB, whether data is inserted. Okay, cool. So this is that data is inserted successfully. So guys, we have done completely about how to insert the data into database without reloading the page in jQuery Ajax in Codeigniter 4. So guys, now we are going to fetch the data using jQuery Ajax. Okay, so guys, now let's get started. So before getting started, I just want to tell that we are going to do about designing the table and fetching the data into that table. So let's get. Okay, so over here you can see the card body. So this is our jQuery Ajax student data over here. So this is a heading, and now inside this card body only we will start the design. Okay, let's create the table bordered, hit enter. Now let's create table head, table row, table heading th, where will be id. So as per our DB requirements, we require that this table data, okay, where you can see name, email, phone, course created at. So we'll call this, let's call that name, email, phone, course, and finally one create, and then one more which will be action for the edit, update and view. Let's create over here td table body, and inside this you are going to give a class called, for example, we are doing student data, right? So that student data will give here, and let's start the code for it. So before starting, let me just refresh this page and check the output. Okay, so you can see that table format. Now let's begin with that. So over here you need to render your section of the script and start the code over here. And let's create one function named as load student. Okay, and inside this we will write the Ajax query, which is jQuery Ajax shortcut method. And let's make this method over here, and we want to get the data. So let's use get method, and I don't want this data and data type because not posting the data. Okay, let's create a route for here. That will be Ajax student students / get data. Okay, so we are going to create this URL route. After that we will fetch the data. So how will you check that? So we will use this for each key. Okay, so each loop we have to check with that. So first let us create and get the data first. Let's go to our routes and let's create here $routes, where you are going to use get method, paste, and move to your controller. So we have already created that controller name. Let me just paste that, and we will tell this method as fetch. So let's go to our Ajax student controller and create a fetch function or a method. So let's move to our Ajax controller, and over here create a public function where fetch will be there. Okay, so fetch method is created, and inside this we have to write the code for it to fetch the data. First let's create a variable called students is equal to, where we are giving the key of our Ajax student model. Okay, and this Ajax student should be imported at the top. So you have to call this, use this model. So this model is already created over here. As you can see that this model is connected with the name stable student, and what are the fields to be added or fetched, updated into that this requirement. And move to our Ajax controller down, and let's write the code. Let's create a variable called data, and inside that we'll create one array that is students s, where you're going to pass this $students, where I'm going to find all the data, find all function we'll use, which is given by Codeigniter, and will be used, and return this, return $this response, where we are getting in JSON format. So let us set that JSON, set JSON, and inside this you are going to pass this variable called data. So let's pass that. Done. As simple. So guys, after doing this you have to go back to your routes, your jQuery code, and over here after that success you are going to see the output over here. So let's console and check the output .log. Let's paste, and now over here you have to call this students, students. So this student is nothing but from here. Let me go over here, let's copy this and fetch over here. Let's see the output now. Let's get back over here, just refresh, and let's inspect. Okay, let's move to our console, let's refresh. Okay, how will you see the output? We have to call this function outside. So let's load this function outside, jQuery doc, where you are going to call this function as simple. So when you load the page, this function will be called automatically, and it will fetch the data and show over here. So we need to check that. refresh. Now over here let us check with that. So you can see that ID number 1 data is coming. So this is how we check that data, right? Over here you can see. So let us just print that in table format. So for that you need to check with the for each loop conditions. Okay, so let us check with that how to make a for each loop in jQuery. So you can type jq each, where you will get this format. So over here we need this response dot student, where inside this we have multiple array. So this is your key value, like index values we tell, and over here the main value. So let me just make it to value, and from this we have to fetch the record. So how will you fetch? So let me just copy this once again and paste over here, where we'll take this value and remove this and make into array of name. So this is my database column name, this name. Okay, so this name I'm going to fetch. Let's get back, and now let's save and see the output of it. Let's refresh. Over here you can see that with data has come. Cool. So now let's print that into a HTML format. So let's comment this and start that data. Dollar open parenthesis and close parenthesis, where I'm going to append the values, append append method, and inside this we have to type the code of it. Okay, so after typing that code, where you want to load that data into a class of this student data. So let's copy and paste over here. That's it. And over here whatever data you're going to append, where I'm going to make this, and inside this you are going to start table row. Okay, and let's make it down. From here let us give slash, and now td open close, concatenate the values to a single quotes, where you are going to paste this value, value dot name. Okay, so first will be id. So let's create one class. Let me just give forward slash. Let's create this value as one class we'll create called student underscore id. Done. And now simple way we have to change that. So let me just complete with this and show you the output of it. Okay, so guys, here is the changes which I have done, and now you can see that email, phone, course, and then simple 3 buttons I have made. Okay, one is for view button, so let us make it view underscore button, and edit button, and one delete button. Okay, so I have assigned the class, and simple for designing thing, view, edit, and delete. So let's save this and check the output of it. Let me just clear this space. Now let's test the, let's refresh. So guys, data has been loaded now, but we missed something over here, that is created at. So let's call that also, where you can tell created underscore at. Oops, we missed the spelling. Save and refresh. So data has come, guys. So guys, finally we have fetched. And now one more thing, like in previous video, when we add that, this table should get automatically loaded, right? So let me just add one data and show you, like om at gmail.com, where I have saved, where BCA. Let's click on save. You can see that student inserted successfully but didn't load. Why? We did not call the function. So let's call that function. Let me copy this load function and paste into that code, wherever you are written that code to insert the data. So at that time you have to load this. So let's call this load student function to load the data. So let us get back again, just refresh the page, and now you can insert the new data and check with that. So let's insert, where here you can tell Vijay at gmail.com, and some phone number, bcom. Let's save. Over here you can see that it's loaded, but it didn't clear the old one, it's concatenated that. So for that, one more thing is there. You need to just empty that table. Okay, so what table you're going to empty? This student data. Let's get back, give class, and then over here .html. Inside this you are going to empty that. Done. So let's save this and let's test one more time. Refresh. Let's click on add. Anwar will give anwar@gmail.com, phone number BCAB. Let's save this and you can see the output. Cool. So this is how we insert and fetch the data without page load. Okay, so guys, we have completed this, how to retrieve the data from database without page load. Okay, in jQuery we are going to learn about how to view the data without page reload or refreshing in Codeigniter 4 using jQuery Ajax. So as you can see, that table has been fetched over here, and when we click on this view button, that time the pop-up model should pop up and with these data. Okay, so guys, let's get started with it. Let me just refresh, and now let's go back to our code. So this is our table. As you saw in previous video, we have fetched the data using this function in Ajax. Okay, so this is the button now, and the button which is over here, view, and the class name button we have given. So this is our button, which is you can see over here. Done. And so let's copy this button name, write the code up for it. So let me just copy, and over here we are going to start the code as you see in the JQ doc. Okay, so now first step we will get with, let's type JQ on event function. Okay, so now over here you need to write the selector. That will be, we are going to check with the document when it's loaded, and on this event, what event we are going to use. So we are going to use click event, and on what click you are going to check with that. So we are telling with the dot class the view button name. Okay, which we just now copied, this button. So once it's done, we have to check the first row ID. So I mean to tell this ID I need. Okay, so for this, as you can see in this function, we have already created one class called student ID with the tr in the table row of it, td where student ID. So let's create a variable. Inside this, I'm going to create one variable called student ID is equal to where dollar open parenthesis, and inside this you are going to tell this where I'm going to get the closest of your, and what closest you are going to get, this tr row. So let's copy this table row which is, and inside this table row I'm going to find, so what you're going to find, that student ID, the class which we have created. So let's copy this. It is a class, so you need to give that dot. Let's give the dot and paste over here, and then we want this value, whatever the data is stored inside this. So we can get that value from the text method. Okay, save this and let's check this output first. So let's use alert function and let's echo this, save, and let us test. Check out that. Let's refresh, and now guys, we are going to click on this first ID. Okay, so let me click on this view button. You can see ID number 1. Cool. So the output is coming, and let's move to ID number 3, and let me click on that view. You can see that ID is coming perfect. So guys, now let's write the code to get the data in model. So let me just comment with this, and now over here we need to write the Ajax query. So let's type JQ Ajax to call the query. Over here we are going to use the post method. So let me just change with this method, and you are going to tell over here post, where you are going to create one URL called Ajax-student/view student. Okay, and now inside this data we have to send the details about that. So we are going to send one student_id data, where this student variable we will send it. As simple. Save it. Once saved, we don't require this data type, so let's remove that. And inside this success we have to get the output. So let's go over here and create a route first, and from there you are going to get the response. Okay, so let's move to routes and create one route over here. So let's type routes routes with the post method. Inside this you're going to pass this, and same controller we are going to use. So let's copy this. Okay, done. And over here create a view function. So let's copy this and go to Ajax Controller and create a view function. Go over here and create one public function with the name view, and inside this you are going to type the code about it. So let's create one variable called students is equal to new and your model. So my model is Ajax student function. Ajax student, this is model. Okay, so model means you have to use at your top, so make sure you are using that model, and the model is this. Okay, with the name student, as simple. So let's get back to our controller and start the code. Let's create one variable called student underscore id is equal to, which will we are getting from the request. Okay, so request request, which is coming by post method. So get by post method, and what is that you are getting over here is nothing but your this data called student id. So let's copy this and paste over here. Done. Once you get, you have to find the object from that id. So before that, let me create one variable called data, and inside this array we'll create one variable called students. Let's give is equal to and call your object, and from that object you are going to find the id. So which id you are going to pass is nothing but this student id you are going to get and pass inside this. So once set, you have to set the set JSON format to return the output. So let's copy that same thing over here, and this data is nothing but your this variable. Okay, as simple. So once it is set, you will get the response in your Ajax over here. So this response will be there. And now let's view this. Let's give console.log where we'll paste this, and now let's check the output of it. So let's go over here, let's refresh. Okay, let's inspect, move to your console, on the console, and now let's click on view. So I have clicked, you can see that student data has come, right? So you can see that to name Om. Okay, second row we clicked, and let me click on this fourth one, click on 4, you can see that the second value has come. So this is how we are fetching all the data. Cool. So now let's get this data into a pop-up model. So I mean to tell in this format. So we are going to use the same model. If you don't know how to use this, please watch out the first video, or else learn about bootstrap model. Okay, so let's get continued with it. So let's comment this and start the code. So for this we have to take all the data about it. Let's use jQuery, which is for each loop in jQuery. Okay, let's set the response, then let's make this as your key or index value, and over here you can tell, let's create a shortcut called student view data. Okay, and this data will be, let us this console log with this and check the output of it. Let me just paste over here, and now over here student view, where you are going to fetch from the array format, that is your database column names. So we have already this name over there, so I mean to tell this name field. So let's refresh and check the output. Let's inspect, and we will check the output first, whether the data is coming or not. Go to console, and let's click on this Ved. You can see that data Ved has come. Let's click on Om over here. Cool. So this is how we are getting now. Let's paste this into a div tag. So for that, let us create the model for it first. So let me just move to top, where we can see that add model for student we have done, and now let us use the same model to view the data, where you can just remove all this details from it and use h4 tag to view the data. So I have already done the design, so let us paste with that. Let me just paste over here. As simple, guys, there is nothing much. I have used one h4 tag inside that span tags where I have defined all these things. So we will be showing the data with this help of class. So let's get down to a script over here, and from here you are going to view the output. So I'll just show one demo with that text you are going to update over there. So what text you are going to update is nothing but just now which you viewed for it. So let's send this over there, where you are going to send the ID first, and let's give dot, which is your class name which you have created in your model. As simple, you can see that. Where is that model? ID view. Let's call this and paste over here, and let me just complete with the 4th step also. Okay, so let me paste, done, and these are the all the fields which we are going to update over there. So that is in the model. So what you have to do, just call the model name over there. So model function, where I'm going to use show, right? And inside this you are going to call that model name. So hash student view model will tell. Okay, let's copy this and give the name, same name to it model. So let's go to a model. So this is what's our view model, view student model, and this is the ID. Let's paste over here, and let me just change this title, save this, and now let's view the output. Let's get back, refresh. Let me close this. So I'm going to click on ID number 1, where I'm going to click view. You can see correct data ved@gmail.com and his phone and course detail has come. So guys, now let's test with another thing, which is ID number 4, where you can see that 4th data has come. Cool. So guys, we have done how to fetch the data or display the data by using ID using jQuery Ajax in Codeigniter 4. So guys, we are going to do about how to edit and update the data. Okay, so guys, now let's get started with this edit option. So what we want to do is that we want to, when we click on this edit button, that time a model should come, something like this, and the same input tags will be there, and then all the data should be fetched. So these data should be fetched inside this form. Okay, so let's get started with it. Let's go to our VS Code editor, and over here this is our table and the script for code. So let's move on, and let me just minimize for this view button. So we coded in previous video about view button, and now we are going to start with this edit button. So same way you are going to get started with it, as simple. So let's check with jQuery on event function, and over here you are going to tell on document select. So when the page loads, I want to check on the click, and then on what click event, which we want that on a button. So what button is nothing but your edit button. So this edit button is nothing but your this edit button. Okay, so this button is your edit button, where you have assigned the edit button class name. So let's call that. So inside the dot you have to paste that. Okay, done. And now over here you have to select with that. So what you're going to select, when we click on this, I need this first ID. So let's get that ID number 1. So how will you get that? For that you have the class student ID inside that. With that help of student ID we are going to fetch. As simple, let's type that. First I'm going to create a variable called student ID is equal to, where you are going to tell this $this. So when it's clicked, I'm going to get the closest value of that. So closest value is nothing but closest attribute is table row, and I'm going to find inside that. So what I'm going to find, the student ID is stud ID, which is the class. So you need to assign with the dot, and then get the whatever text inside that. So text function, and now you will get this student ID. So guys, now let's write the Ajax code to call that. As simple, jQuery Ajax and make this type to method, and method we are going to send is post post. And let's remove this data type, we don't require. And over here inside this data you need to send this student ID. So let me just create that input of your student ID, and this you are going to take and paste over here. That's it, done. And the URL will be your route, so Ajax edit, okay, not like this, Ajax student / edit we will tell. Okay, let's save, and now let's create a route with this. So first step, so after creating all the code works, then we are getting into response. So let's create a route. Let me just copy, go to routes.php, and let's create one route, simple $ROUTS routes, where I'm going to use post method, okay, because we have passed the post method into that. And let's move to our controller called Ajax student controller, which we have already created that. So let's copy and paste the same controller name, and over here we'll create one edit method. Done. Okay, why is this error showing? Oops, I have given a dot. Make it sure you are giving comma. So let's go to our Ajax controller and create a edit function over there. Ajax controller, let's create public function where I'm going to use this edit. Oops. And inside this we have to type the code. So as simple, you are getting the data, right? So we have already used the same code to get that. So let me just paste that same code. So as simple, created a variable, and inside this we are calling our Ajax model, where you have to call this model. So to call this model, you have to call at the use, with the use thing, where you can call this Ajax student. So this Ajax is already over here. So this is my table. So let's get back to our function called edit over there, and getting your student ID. So this student ID you are getting from your Ajax code. So over here you have pasted this. So let's copy this and paste over here. Paste that, and then you are storing into variable student ID, and then you are passing that ID into your object called students. So this student object, where you are finding the data of your from your Ajax student using find function, and then storing into variable of array, that is students. Done. So after everything works, then you are sending this data into a response of JSON format. So let's pass this $data variable inside this, and after the success of this, you are going back to your index.php file over here. So let's copy and console.log function and see the output of it. So let's get back to our Google Chrome, refresh the page, you will be able to find the output. So let me just open console. So let's click on inspect and go to your console page over here. So just ignore these 3 lines because this is a bootstrap thing, so just ignore that, and let's click on this edit button on ID number 1. Let's click edit. You can see the data has come over here. Perfect. So ID, all the data is coming. Let me click on 4. You can check with that ID 4, it's coming. Cool. So guys, now let's fetch this data into our model, so which will be using the same model, we will use it. So let's close and let's move out, and over here let me just comment, and first let us fetch all the data. So how will you fetch that? Using for each loop. So in jQuery you have to use jQuery over here, and then let's take this and set the response over here and make this as key, where your student value. Done. And then you have to assign it into one value. So let's give a text or val you can give. We need an input box, so we just mention with the val, where you're going to mention that in your name. First we'll take with that ID and give this into hashtag, where I'm going to tell student underscore ID. Then same for this second one also. So let me just complete with this 4 steps, 4 input step. Done. Now guys, let's call that model also. So what model you are going to call? Oops, let's give escape. And now inside this you want to show the model. So whenever you click that modal model, which will be show, and the model ID which you are going to tell is hash student edit model. Okay, so we are going to create with this ID a model. So let's get back to our top where you can check with that add student model, right? So let us copy this. Oops, let me just copy and paste over here. Let's mention it as edit student model. And now you have to copy your ID. So what ID you have given that code? Okay, so this is the ID which we are going to assign with the model. This is our edit student model over here. Let's paste that. And now over here, edit student data, and the data you have to pass inside this. So what will you pass over here? You need to pass that ID. ID is equal to where you are going to tell that all your IDs which we have given over here. So student ID. So first you have to create one input for student ID. Let's create that input, which I am going to give as hidden. We do not need to show that. Let's give ID. We are going to tell this student ID. So same way you have to assign this ID for student underscore name with this. Okay, student underscore name, email also for the email. So let's complete this for our inputs. So guys, now I have pasted for this each input tags email, phone and error course. Okay, so I just removed that the validation part from here to show that message. And now let's continue guys to update the data. So let's go back to our model over here. Let's save. Everything is working fine. And now let's check this. So let's come over here, refresh the page, and then let's click on it. Let me click on edit. You can see the model edit student data where you can see ved@gmail.com, phone number BCA. Cool. Everything is working. Let's check with the ID number 4. You can see Anwar data has come. So guys, now let us change this button name to update, and when we click on this, the data should get saved. So let's begin with that. So first step, we will change the button name first. So let's make it to update. And over here, let me change this button name to update. Okay, student Ajax student, which is update, right? So let's take this name and start the code about it. So let's get back below in your script tag, and let's let's make it small and start the code as simple. Let's check with JQ on event, where you're going to select document, and event will be click event on which will be Ajax student update. So on this click, the function should work. So now once it works, everything is fine over here. So let's call that var, create a variable called var data is equal to, inside the curly braces, I want to fetch all the input fields. So how can you fetch that? So first let us tell name, not name, we will give ID and then name. So first get that. So what you're going to get, the ID over here. So we are in the student edit model over here, and this is the student ID. So let's copy this, which is in the ID. Copy and get back to your script over here. Let's paste that hashtag where I'm going to get that value from that. Okay, done. And now same way you are going to paste for everyone. Change this variable things. So let me just change and add all things. So over here we are sending this name, and from here you are going to call that name attribute of your model. So name ID, so this name will be copied, and then student email. So let's get back to code over here. Let's update that. So let me just finish with it. So I have added now. Once it's done, guys, now we have to create the Ajax query to update the data. So let's tell JQ Ajax and change this type to method, where we are going to tell this as post method, and from this we have to create a URL. But before creating URL, let's remove this some data we don't need over here, and this thing we are going to remove and call this variable called data over here. And let's create a URL Ajax student, where / you are going to update. Done. And then you are going to send it. Let's copy this name, URL, and create a route. We are using post method, so let's create route called post, and inside this pass this, and let's go to our same controller called Ajax student controller, paste, and let's create a function called update into our student Ajax controller. Let's move over there and create the function. Now type public function, let's create a variable called student. Student is equal to where your key of your model, that is Ajax student. This is my model, where you have assigned at top, where you have called that over here inside my model. And now first let's create the variable with the name student underscore ID is equal to where you are getting the $this, which will be a request by get the post method. Okay, and that ID will be from your Ajax over here. As you can see that ID, you can mention this directly ID, or let's give us student underscore ID. Okay, so let's copy the student underscore ID and call it over here as simple. And then let's create a variable one more data and assign that array over there, and inside this you have to call that. So let's call the name, where inside this you are going to call this same post method, and let's remove this semicolon, add comma over here because we are inside the array, and let's call that input name. So same way you have to call this for all these inputs. So let me just finish with that. So guys, I have done this, and now these fields are nothing but your database column fields, so which means that this column names of your database. So let's get back over here, and now let's call this object student and send the update function into this. And first will be pass the ID, so we are going to pass that student ID, give comma and space, then pass your variable called data. Let's copy and paste over here, so your data will get updated. So after getting updated, you need to send the response over here. Let's copy this and paste over here, and what you are going to send in this. So let me just send with that one message over here. So let's tell $message, okay, is equal to where you are sending with the array, and inside this you are going to tell that status, and then give comma and again mention, not comma, give this is equal to forward arrow, where you are going to tell updated successfully. Okay, done. Let's save this and pass this message called message over here inside this. So let's get back to our index page, and after that response you are getting, so let's call that over here. So how will you call that? We are setting the message, so we have already used one alertify to show the message. So let me just paste that, paste over here, and once the responses come over here, that status will be called. Okay, so this, make sure your spelling is correct over here, which you are sending that status. So this status should be sent correctly. So after updating, you need to close some models, right? So which I mean to say, this model, when you click on update, let me just refresh once again. Okay, something is missing, I think. So let me just inspect that. What is that? It's not showing. Console, see on this, something is missing, which is, let me just click on it. So you can move to source. Okay, so here is the error. Let's get back and give comma over here. Okay, save this and let's refresh. Let's go to console. Cool, so data is working fine. And now let's continue our code. So you can see that, right? So when I click to update, the data should get update, and then this model should be closed automatically and input should get empty. Okay, so let's get started with that. So first we will move. So now let's move over here and let me just paste that code. So these three codes I have pasted over here, and the first code is as simple. You can see that what the models you are going to load, that you have to change with that, right? So let's call that model ID. You can see that edit student, which is student edit model. Let's take that and paste it into your update success code. Okay, and this model will be hide. So automatically when it's successful, it will hide. And then your student table data, this table data where your records is fetched, that time it will make it to empty, and then again call this load function. So this load function is nothing but your query of getting the data and looping that, as simple. So let's see and execute that. Let's refresh. So I'm going to click on this second ID where edit, and now we will change this course to MCA. Let's update, and you can see that updated successfully message also came, and your data also is loaded where you can see MCA without the page refresh. Cool. So now let's again update with this last ID where I want to make this course as BCom, and let me click. So there is no page refresh load or reload. Okay, let's click on update. You can see everything successfully updated. So guys, this is how we do this jQuery Ajax CRUD application in Codeigniter 4. And let's continue how to confirm and delete the data using jQuery Ajax in Codeigniter 4. So guys, we will be using one pop-up model, that is the bootstrap model, something like this. Okay, so let's get started with it. So let's move to our editor, and over here you can see that our table structure which we have shown over there, and let's move to our code place first. So inside this, you're going to view your table, right? So I mean to tell the button over here. Let me just show you this button, delete button. That delete button only we are accessing using jQuery. Okay, so over here let's give a class. So we have already assigned this class, and let's do the code for it. So first let's copy this class name and write a simple code, JQ on event function. Okay, as simple. On this we need to select with the document, so whenever the website loads automatically, and your event will be click event. On what click is nothing but your delete button. So delete button is inside the class, so you need to assign the dot, as simple. Now when you click on this, the action should be performed. So what action you are going to perform? Nothing but getting this ID. Okay, so let's get this ID. When I click this, the time this ID should be called. So let's get back and call that over here. So first step, inside this you can see, inside this table whatever we have passed, you can see the student ID class over here. So let's use this class and get the data. Now create a variable called student ID is equal to where $this. So whenever you click this button, that time whichever button you click on this, that time it should get the closest value. So closest value is nothing but the table row. So let's go to the table row, and what you're going to find that data. Okay, so what you're going to find is nothing but your student ID. So this is in a class, so you need to assign that dot and then paste. And what the data is directly pasted over here, the ID. So it is in text format. So let's give text function. Now let's alert and check this. Let's copy the student ID and paste over here and test with it. So let's get back, refresh your page, and now let's click on delete button. ID 1 you are getting perfect. Let's click on ID 3 on this. Let's click on delete. You can see that ID 3 it's coming. So guys, on this basis only we are going to delete. So let's get back and start the code about it. So let's comment this and pass this in your model. So what model you are going to create? So let's create a model function where you are going to tell show, and that model ID we are going to assign that as student delete model. Okay, let's copy this and create a model with this. So we have already done some models, right? You can see for the adding one model we have done for viewing and editing. So let's copy this view model only, and here we will create one more model as simple. Let's change this name over here. So this will be a delete student model, and the ID you have to assign over here. So what ID you have given there? So let's go back to our code over here, script. Let's copy the script ID and paste into your delete student model. That's it. So model is pasted over here, and let's change this title. Let's give it as student delete data. So this will be the title, and remove unwanted data from here. Are you sure want to delete this data? Give question mark and create one button. Okay, as simple like yes, delete, and you are going to assign a class over here. Let me make it to danger Ajax student, which will be delete button. Okay, save this, done. And now we need to pass one input to check that ID. So let's pass that ID over here, and let's give the value, not value, we are going to tell ID is equal to, inside this, student underscore delete underscore ID. So make unique name, not any other ID should not be repeated, otherwise it will get clashed. So make sure you are having a unique name for deleting the data. Let's get down to our script and paste that ID into this input value. Let's get back, script over here. So before that, let us give this where hash and your ID. So what data you are going to paste inside val. So input is nothing but your value and the ID which we have alerted. So let's copy this and paste over here, as simple. Now let's get back to our browser and check. Let's refresh. Okay, and now let's click on delete ID number 1. I'm going to click where you can find that ID is coming 1. So on this basis only we are going to delete the data. Let's check with another last value, which is 4. So perfectly coming. Let's make it to this input box as hidden and delete according to that. First step, let's make that hidden. The input box, this is the student delete input HEIDDEN, hidden. That's it. Save, and now let's code that. So first you have to copy this Ajax student delete button. Let's copy and go back to your script and type the code for it. So let me just minimize with this, and same way you can just copy and paste that. So let's copy this and copy the last statement and then make sure you're copying this button and paste over here. So whenever you click this, that button will work. So let me just alert the data first. Let's create one variable called student underscore ID is equal to dollar. You're going to get the value dot val. So what value are going to get? Which value? Let's go to your model. Let me just minimize with this also table. This is your model, delete model. Inside this you have given that input where delete the ID. You're going to call this value inside this. So you are using ID, give a hash, and then your data will be over here. And let's pass this into your jQuery Ajax. So let's create the Ajax over here to delete the data perfectly. Let's use jQuery Ajax and make this method from type to method, where you are going to use the post method only to delete data, and you don't need this data type because we don't require. And now we need to set the URL. So let's set the URL called Ajax student Ajax-student / where I'm going to tell delete, and inside this data, the data you are going to pass. So let's pass that first. So let's create an input which will be student ID, and inside the student ID you are going to pass your this variable which you have created, and give comma or else ignore with that. Save. And now after the success, whatever the response you are getting, at that time you have to save. So first let's create a route for it. So let's go to our routes.php and create a route. Let's create a routes where I'm going to use the post method because we have given post, and inside this pass the route, create a route, and then call your controller. So we are going to use the same controller, Ajax student controller, where we are going to delete function. Okay, so let's go to our student controller and create a delete function. Let's move over there, and now you need to create that function, public function delete function, and inside this you have to create a variable called student is equal to where key of your Ajax student, your model. So Ajax student, and inside this you have to import at the top. So import your class, that is your model. Okay, so this is my model which we have created over here. So let's get back to a controller called delete function, and now let's copy this your object and call the delete function given by Codeigniter, and inside this you are going to call your ID. So what ID you are going to call? $this of which is a request of your by getting the data by post method. Okay, so what you are going to get? The code you have written Ajax. So let's copy the student ID and paste over here as simple. Done. So once the ID gets over here, it will automatically delete the data. After deleting, you need to send the message. So let us just copy from top only and send that data over here. Done. And now when you set this response over here, you will tell deleted successfully. So once you are this is setting right, you are getting the return response. So this response you are going to get in your Ajax query in your success function. So let's give the message to show that I'm using Alertify. So if you don't know how to integrate that, please watch out the video, link given in the description. Let me paste it. Done. So once it successes correctly, if it is done, that time it will call this status. So let's copy this status and you need to paste over here as simple. So let's get back over here. When you click on delete, okay, so when you click on delete, yes, delete, that time this model should automatically close, and then this table also should refresh without page reload. So let's paste that code also over here. As simple, you can see to load the data, we have used the function called this load. So first let us call that, and to close your model, that means Let's call that model over here, model function. Oops, spelling mistake over here. And let's give hide. And what model you are going to hide is nothing but your student delete model. So let me go to top and copy the student delete model ID, copy that and paste back over here. So once deleted, the time you are going to load the table. So before loading that, I want to empty and again load that. So for that, which you need to copy your table name. Let me just open. So this is my to load the data. So let me just copy that and load that over here. It's in a class, so give dot and then whatever the data is there, first make it empty and then load the table data. Okay, and set the message. Simple. So let's save this and now let's get back, refresh the page and test the output. Let's click let me add one data called dummy where phone, and let me just click on save. You can see please enter course. So let's enter course BCA. Let's save. You can see student inserted successfully and the data also has come without page reload. Okay, and let's click on delete this data. So let's click yes, delete. You can see data deleted successfully and that ID number 5 is deleted. So guys, we have successfully completed our CRUD application using jQuery Ajax in Codeigniter 4, and thank you for watching this video. Please subscribe, like and share.